You know, first of all, I'd be advertising myself as a blues guitarist, harmonica player, seeks work, and then it sort of ran the gamut, you know, from that to the guitarist writer seeks creative musicians, receptive musicians, determined to strive beyond existing stagnant music forms. I thought I'd try and say it all. A bit of a mouthful to speak, but if you read it, it sounds like someone who's focused and determined, and ex-grammar school boy wants to make his mark. The extraordinary thing was, I played to both Pete and Tony just some stuff with my brother in the bedroom, and they seemed to like that. And then I met Mike, who wasn't well and was recovering from some stomach problems, and I think he had an ulcer or something. This young guy, 20, with an ulcer. I was trying to figure that, and he was sitting there in his pajamas. I was meeting him for the first time. Again, all this stuff was going on in bedrooms. And what I didn't realise was that as I was talking to them about music, I was doing this sort of three-tier kind of audition with them. You know, like a couple of guys thought I was all right, the other guitarist thought I was all right, and then we worked in a rehearsal room. And what I wasn't prepared for was just how loud Phil Collins was acoustically in a rehearsal room. And you know, the amp that I had obviously wasn't going to pass muster. The guitar I had, the amp I had. So rather grandly I said to them, really what I need is a Les Paul and a Marshall stack, or was it a high watt stack? It was something like that. And I thought, they're never going to wear this, it's never going to happen, forget it, you know. You're just asking for too much. And then practically the following day, it arrived. So, you know, the old adage about if you don't ask, you don't get was absolutely true. So, you know, all I would say to anyone who's young watching this is, you know, be outrageous with your dreams, your demands, whatever, but don't stay silent. You know, don't dream it, be it. You've just got to go for it, whatever it is.
They were very nice guys, I have to say. They were all very polite. We lived in a tiny flat, and they went in the bedroom and they do a bit of rehearsing and everything. And I used to cook up, I don't know, panfuls of chips and fried egg sandwiches, all that kind of thing that you do. And it was just very, very nice. But before that, Stephen came in one day with an album and said, listen to this, Mum. It was called Trespass. And I said, oh, I love it. Because to me, it's the combination of classical and rock. And this was, you know, in the very early days. And he said, oh, I've auditioned with them. And anyway, the rest is history. Got the part, got the job.
Genesis, as a band, weren't really looking for a guitar hero as such. They wanted subtlety, little shades of things tinkling away, 12-string, that was very important to them. They certainly wanted a lead guitarist, but at the time we were very much into accompanying what was going on with the vocals. So I used to have to work very, very hard within the five-piece, because three of the band, Tony, Mike and Phil, were capable of sounding self-sufficient without any vocals, without any extra guitar from me. So, you know, they were really a power trio at that time that I suspect the other two, Peter Gabriel and myself, were trying to impinge upon and have some sort of relevance. So I really used to have to work very hard to at times become a cello, to double the bass line, to be the brass. Mike used to come up with the most unlikely changes. He would use open tunings for guitars and managed to produce out a rhythm guitar. Yeah, great riffs, great songs. He was a 12-string fanatic, also bass player at that time. He hadn't really, when I worked with him, fully engaged with, you know, 6-string electric bleed stuff, but the stuff that he did before that, I think, would give any of the great British rhythm players a run for their money. Brilliant at coming up with bass lines, vocal lines, very often very simple things that worked beautifully. And I'm still looking for that level of immediacy and simplicity in my own work. And I'm thinking now that you don't have to write everything in a ridiculous time signature with lots of hiccuping. I think it's the downside of prog, in fact, is that, too much punctuation, not enough statement. Downside of jazz, too much whittle, not enough tune. But it's what you get off on, If someone gets off on the idea of encoded rhythm sounds, can't find the one. It's almost like bebop. It's what drives it. It's what drives progressive, but it's also what drives a lot of people mad, and they want to be able to tap your foot to it. And I think Mike bridged the gap there between complicated progressive and prog, and that sort of immediate thing that you'd get from the Stones or the Who. When I first met Pete, I really didn't understand what he was talking about. He seemed to be talking Venusian, but then I suspect I was probably talking my own brand of Venusian, and indeed all the guys in Genesis seemed to have their own language and their own reference points. Pete was very creative. I hadn't got a clue what he was talking about, but by the time he'd worked with one other band member, something would get knocked into shape. So, years later when Pete was working with Robert Fripp said he spent 2 or 3 weeks working with Pete, writing down everything on paper because it seemed as if it was flexible. The idea of a song with Pete was flexible. In fact, I think what he enjoyed most of all was before a song was fixed, whilst it was still flexible, while it was still in the process of becoming something. That was what galvanized him most of all. And Pete likes to take his time over that. I can understand that. It's like endless foreplay. Fantastic, wonderful.